Marvin Anderson was the 99th person in the United States to be exonerated due to DNA evidence. In 1982, a young white woman was kidnapped and sexually assaulted by a black man who approached her on a stolen bicycle. She had mentioned to the police that during her attack, the assailant had mentioned that he was dating a white woman. This particular detail stood out to an officer who at the time knew 18-year-old Marvin Anderson as the only black man within the community that was dating a white woman and living with her. This caused investigators to set their sights onto him as the perpetrator. What is even more upsetting is the fact that they didn't have any pictures of him due to the fact that he had no criminal record. They had to obtain a picture of him from his job. This picture was in color and included his employee ID number on it. They took this picture and slipped it into an array of mugshots, all of which were black and white and none of which included numbers on them. They presented these pictures to the victim and she chose Marvin's picture. She later identified him as her assailant in a lineup about an hour after picking his picture, and then later identified him as her assailant in court. Despite that he had an alibi, the fact that he didn't fit the descriptions of the attacker and that there were rumors about another man in the community committing this crime, he was sentenced to 210 years in prison. In 2001, DNA evidence became more readily available and was used to re-examine Marvin's case. This proved his innocence and he was exonerated after being wrongfully imprisoned for 15 years. There were many shortcomings within his case that led to his wrongful conviction. One of which being the fact that the lineup was mishandled, which led the witness to mistakenly ID him as her attacker. In 2015, the National Research Council stated that eyewitnesses make mistakes and that their memories may be affected by law enforcement procedures that are meant to test their memories. Marvin's photo was the only one with color and numbers on it, which made it stick out in a sea of plain black and white photos. According to MedWed, this is what is called a suggestive lineup. When one detail is so dissimilar, it's basically screaming for the victim to select it. On top of that, even though the second lineup included fillers that looked similar to Marvin in order to avoid a suggestive lineup, unfortunately, the victim still chose him again, considering that she was already primed from the initial array of mugshots and the fact that he was the only person that was shown again from the pictures. This is explained by Garrett and his colleagues, who found that in many cases involving eyewitness testimony, there are errors in overconfident witnesses due to police suggestibility and reinforcement. Another factor that led to his wrongful conviction was the tunnel vision present within the case's investigators. In 2012, Finley described tunnel vision as a product of logical fallacies such as confirmation or hindsight bias that cause us to filter out information based on what we already know or believe. The one officer focused on the detail of the assailant being in a relationship with a white woman and narrowed his search down to the one person he knew fit that narrative, Marvin. In his specific case, confirmation bias played a big role, which is the tendency to seek out information that confirms what we believe. This led investigators to focus on Marvin instead of other potential suspects. It is even more upsetting when considering the fact that he had an alibi and that there were complete inconsistencies between the victim's descriptions and Marvin's appearance. The third issue with Anderson's case is the fact that his defense was inadequate and failed to mention or bring in any evidence relevant to the talks about another man named John Otis Lincoln, who was believed to have committed this crime. Also, on top of this, the owner of the stolen bicycle had confirmed that Lincoln was the person who stole it. It was found in 2011 that inadequate defense lawyering plays a big role in wrongful conviction cases, and according to Marvin himself, his defender did not provide legal representation properly and ignored his request to call both Lincoln and the owner of the bike to testify in court. His case highlights the flaws within our criminal justice system, including the risks of relying on eyewitness testimony, present biases, and inadequate defense.